Everyone. Since we're in Olympic season, I thought it'd be worthwhile to mention an image that comes up over and over again throughout many of the individual competitions. You have an athlete, the coach calls him or her over, and the coach, kind of brings the athlete in. They have a little bit of a pep talk. It's usually some chest smacking, back slapping, shoulder shaking. Apparently, those are the things you need to do to reset someone. It's kind of like, you shake the alarm clock and magically it stops ringing off the hook or something like that. Anyway, so you have this pep talk, and then the athlete goes out to his or her heat and performs. In Parshas Eikev, this week's Parsha, God gives a pep talk to the Jewish people. And I believe that if we look at it closely, God's not only giving a pep talk to the generation of the Jews who are leaving the desert and about to go take over the land of Israel, but it's a pep talk to each and every one of us. Let's walk through it. In chapter 7, verse 17, Perek Zayin, Pasuk Yud Zayin, at the very beginning of the Parsha, God says the following through Moses. Ki samar belvavcha, maybe you're going to say in your heart, Rabim hagoyim ha'ela mimeni, these nations are much greater than I am. Eicha ucha lahar yisham, how am I going to be able to drive them out? How am I going to be able to inherit their land? We can apply the same thing to our life. We have a deadline coming up. We have a presentation we need to give. We have a deal we need to close. Maybe you're going to say in your heart, I can't take that. I can't take this new account. I'm not going to be able to make the sale. I'm not going to be able to get the deal done. So God tells the Jews, Lo sira mehem. Don't worry. Don't be afraid of them. Zachor tizkar, you should remember, Eis asher asa Hashem Elokecha, all that Hashem, your God, did, L'paro l'chol Mitzrayim, to Paro and to all of Egypt. So Hashem is touching on the history the Jewish people had with him and the experiences that they had with God saving the day and God saving the Jewish people from the Egyptians. That same idea applies to each one of us as well. Somehow we got to where we are. We're sitting and we're watching this video. Maybe we're coming back from work. Maybe we're sitting at our kitchen table. But everything else that happened in our life to get to this point, we overcome, we accomplished, we succeeded. Of course, with God's help. But God's like, remember what happened in the past. You don't think you're going to be able to make this deal happen? Remember, you closed that Smith account 2 years ago. You thought you were never going to close. Now keep that in mind. Next verse, number 19, Yud Tes. Hamasos hagdolos, the great tests asher ra'u einecha, that your eyes saw, va'osos va'movsim, and the signs and the wonders, va'yad hachazak, and God's mighty hand, va'azro hanatuya, and God's outstretched arm. A lot of these images we come and we bring to the Seder on Pesach time. These images are not things that we haven't heard of before. Asher tzilach Hashem Elokecha, that God, with which God took you out. So too Hashem your God will do, to all of the nations, to all the nations of whom you are afraid in their presence. God's reminding the Jewish people not only of the fact that an exodus took place, but God's reminding them of all the miracles, of all the wonders, of all the signs that he sent to the Egyptians via Moshe Rabbeinu. In our life as well, God's reminding us, if we use this as a paradigm to overcome difficult situations, God's reminding us to think about the details that happened along the way. Let's go back to the Smith account that we closed 2 years ago. You found parking in Midtown Manhattan. No small feat. That's almost miraculous. You get your coffee from the barista at Starbucks, and you turn around and someone almost spills it in your face. almost bumps into you, but you see them and you kind of do that whole swoop thing, and you show up to the presentation looking put together. But you know that didn't almost happen. And you also remember the fact that you made that connection between your train and your subway. For those of you who haven't been into New York City or another metropolis, a subway is this like train thing that goes underground. It's not usually called a light rail. Anyway, back to our topic. You made the connection, but you made it through this big station. You made it just in time. Don't forget about all the little details along the way that could have gone wrong, but God made sure went smoothly. V'gam es hatziron, also the hornet swarm. Yishalach Hashem Elokecha bam, God is going to send on your behalf. Ad avod, until they are wiped out. Hanisharim v'anistarim mipanecha, until those who are hiding from you, until the remnant of the battle have dissipated, have been lost, have been wiped out by this hornet swarm. What is this hornet swarm? Our rabbis tell us that God had, you think they had the killer bees in Washington State? No, these were really killer bees. They would shoot venom out of some sort of fang from one side of the Jordan River to the other side against the Canaanim, against the people who lived in what would be the land of Israel, and it incapacitated them. That's miraculous. What? Come on. Miracles happen in our life? Yeah. But not only that, focus on the last few words, until the remnant and those who are hiding from you are wiped out. We don't know what was going on in Mr. Smith's head when he's weighing whether to take allow you to make the sale, to close the deal. He was going back and forth. I don't know. He's really going to give it to Johnson. Johnson, we've had the account for a long time, and I don't want to have to deal with getting on board a new system, blah, blah, blah. And he's going back and forth and back and forth. He's like, I don't know, but he has a really sharp tie. I'm going to go with him. We have no idea why Mr. Smith decided to go for you. And maybe we're never going to know. We have no idea if the Jewish people were fully aware of every single detail of miracle that took place in their conquest of the land of Israel. But God's reminding the Jewish people, there's other stuff behind the scenes that are going on that you might not know about. I took care of that. And I will take care of that. Don't worry. And Hashem concludes, Lo sarotz mipneihem. Don't be broken before them. Ki Hashem lokecha b'kirbecha, because Hashem your God is in your midst. Kel gadol v'nora. A great and awesome God. And that ends that unit, so to speak. And then Hashem describes how the Jewish people will inherit the land of Israel and how everything was calculated. But I think the key factor we need to keep in mind is God's telling the Jewish people, don't be afraid of the people who live in the land of Canaan, because I'm with you. We have all that history. I'm telling you, I'm going to give you a miraculous playbook. Don't worry. I'm going to be with you. I'm going to make sure that there's a successful conclusion to this conquest, that you will get the land of Israel as I promised. And I think the application to our lives is as follows. It's natural to feel overwhelmed when we're at a new situation. There's nothing wrong with feeling stressed, with feeling anxiety, with feeling emotionally just, I can't, overwhelmed, put upon. To feel so wound up at a stressful situation that I just want to shut down. I want to go under my pillow and hide until it's over. COVID-19 brought mental health issues to the forefront of American society because so many Americans who had never had an issue before were now experiencing mental health crises due to the fact that COVID-19 and the whole situation upended their life as they knew it. And we need to keep in mind that no matter what we're feeling, and how overwhelmed we might be, God's still with us. God was with the Jewish people in Egypt, and he took them out and made them a nation that was the only one that had an intimate relationship with him for the rest of time. The Jewish people were nomads wandering the desert for 40 years, and then God takes them and gives them our spiritual homestead, the land of Israel. Fast forward to more modern times, 1948, 1949, the Jewish people are abandoned on the world stage after the world had voted to allow Israel to go back to their homeland. And no one else would really help them out. The Jewish people were isolated and alone. And you know what? Against all odds, Hashem brought salvation to the Jewish people. If we look at our own lives and we're honest with ourselves, I am certain that each and every one of us will see how God brought success, brought salvation, brought a rectification of a difficult situation to our lives. We just have to be willing to look for it. But God's guaranteeing the Jewish people, then and now, that he will be with us no matter how difficult things may be. And no matter how big the challenge may seem, how insurmountable the obstacle could be, regardless of how we feel inside, God says, don't worry, because I am with you. Ladies and gentlemen, if we walk through life as it were holding God's hand because God is Bikir Becha, God is in our midst, we'll be able to tap into talents, emotional energy, insight, and all of the good that comes along with being connected to God. We don't have to worry if we're going through life. If we worry, it's natural. It's okay. We can deal with it. We can overcome it. We can grow through it. The phrase scared to death only needs to be a phrase. We don't have to let ourselves be incapacitated by our emotions. As overwhelming as they feel, work through it in therapy. Talk it over with a friend. But don't let those fears and anxieties convince you that you cannot be successful. Because Ki Hashem Elokecha b'kirbecha kel gadol v'nora. Maybe we might feel that challenge is too much for us, but it is certainly not too much for God. Have a great week.